Progressive preacher and politician James Talarico seems to be lying about his recent interview with Stephen Colbert, and he makes even more claims about Jesus and Christianity that just aren't true. Also, I got to host the Republican Attorneys General debate last night. We've got a fun recap for you, and the adult doll people are back. And this time, they've got a message for ICE, but I also have a message for them. All of this and more on today's episode of Relatable. Hey guys, welcome to Relatable. Happy Wednesday. Hope everyone is having a wonderful week so far. We've got a lot to cover on today's episode. But first up, I just want to say that it's my birthday and I am turning 34 today. And I am so thankful that I get to spend part of my birthday with you guys. But I just want to give a shout out to my team, because if I could pan the camera around, you would see many of them, not all of them, but many of them are wearing dinosaur party hats to celebrate, to honor a key part of Relatable, which is that we don't really believe that the modern depictions of dinosaurs are accurate. So it's become a running joke, but they gave me an incredible present. You actually can't see it because it's up here. I don't know if we can pan the camera up, if that's going to mess everything up. It's okay if it will. But they gave me this beautiful picture right here that says Commissar of MAGA Morality. And it's these, you see it right there, right next to C.S. Lewis and right next to this beautiful picture. We've got Commissar of MAGA Morality. You'll remember that Hillary Clinton gave me that wonderful nickname. And then up there, we have our Media Matters nickname, which is Pastel Hate Influencer. And we're going up. There we go. Pastel Hate Influencer right next to our blue bonnets. And so thank you to Hillary Clinton for giving me that wonderful moniker. And thank you to my team for celebrating with super fun and very thoughtful gifts. They're so sweet. Best team ever, best audience ever. I really am so glad to be here today with you. And I've got a request for you. The reason I have the best audience ever, one of the reasons is because I have the most generous audience ever. Whenever I ask you guys, hey, can you support this person? Share the arrows with this person who is getting persecuted, lambasted for standing up for what is good, right, and true. Or, hey, this pregnancy center needs our help. Or this organization needs our support. Y'all pray, you donate items, you donate money, you send words of encouragement, you stand up for those people. And I have the sharing arrowist, most generous, most charitable, kindest audience out there. And so in honor of my birthday, this is how you can help me celebrate my birthday, is by donating to this really special organization called Scarlet Hope. So on my previous birthdays, we've donated to these pregnancy centers, and this is not a pregnancy center, but they are doing incredible work in a different segment of society that is really underserved. So I met the founder of Scarlet Hope a couple weeks ago in California. Her name is Rochelle Starr, and she told me that several years ago, she was driving to work. She passed by a strip club that she drove by many days when she was on her commute, and she just felt this conviction that she needs to share the gospel with the women who are working in this building, who are working at this strip club. And so she did. She started to go there and started to deliver meals to these women, started building relationships with these women who are in the adult entertainment industry. She started sharing the gospel with them, and that started Scarlet Hope. And so this is an outreach organization to exploited women, to trafficked women, women who work in the adult entertainment industry. They're in 11 major cities. They go to these places, they find these women who are being exploited, who are sometimes by choice objectifying themselves, sometimes not by choice being objectified. They bring them meals, they bring them hope, they share the gospel with them. They try to get them out of this industry and into a life of dignified work, actually being able to provide for themselves and to provide for their kids. And this is fully empowered by the love of Christ. And I just love Rochelle's story. Her story is one of following God into unknown places, not knowing what the outcome is going to be, not knowing if she is equipped, not knowing anything about this world. But Rochelle and her husband just obeyed the Lord and obeyed his voice. And now they're in 11 different cities across the country, and they are loving these women, sharing the gospel and giving them material resources that they need to survive. And so I would really encourage you to go to scarlethope.org. Go to scarlethope.org. You can find out more information about them, what they do, and how your money will support these women who are made in the image of God, but have maybe been told their entire lives that they're worth nothing, that they are unlovable. We want these women to know the good news of the gospel. So if you want to help me celebrate my birthday, that's how I would love for you to celebrate. Go to scarlethope.org to donate. Also, if you would like to come to Share the Arrows, our Christian Women's Conference happening on October 10th in Dallas, Texas, then make sure to get your tickets. Go to sharethearrows.com. We've got an incredible speaker lineup. This is our gospel-centered, worship-filled, no fluff Christian Women's Conference. You will not get this kind of lineup anywhere else. It's such a special day, and I'm thankful to the Lord that we get to do it the third year in a row. Go to sharethearrows.com. Get your tickets today. And then last little announcement before we get into the topics for today. And that is, if you love this show, please like this video on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and on Google Play. If that's what you listen on, it helps our show a lot. Also, if you leave us a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. All right, let's get into the craziness of what's going on in the world and try to do what we always do, bring as much clarity as possible and meet this crazy, chaotic culture with as much courage as we can. So let's talk about none other than State Representative James Talarico. Now, if you have been listening to the show for any amount of time, you probably know who James Talarico is. And I would love one day to have an in-person discussion with him, but until that comes to fruition, I am left with responding to the things that he says about Christianity and politics on this show. That is an intersection I'm so interested in. And I think State Representative Talarico represents the exact wrong version and deadly and actually demonic version of what a Christian in politics should look like. He is a progressive seminarian who is running for U.S. Senate. He's actually running for the primary seat right now against Jasmine Crockett. And then if he wins the primary in a few weeks, he will be going up against John Cornyn. And he has suggested recently that during an interview that the FCC, prompted by President Trump, was actually trying to silence him, that President Trump didn't want the world to see James Talarico on Colbert. So he personally intervened using the FCC and shut his interview down. The problem is that's not actually true. We'll get into that in just a second. Let me pause, tell you about our first sponsor for the day, and that is Fellowship Home Loan. So as we move deeper into the new year, a lot of us are thinking about creating a home that really serves our families. Maybe you feel like you've waited long enough and your kids are getting older and you're like, hey, I don't want to wait until they're in middle school or high school to have the home, the property that we really need and we think will help them have a great childhood. Or maybe it's just a project that you've wanted to start, or maybe you just want to simplify your finances or build more margin for the months ahead. Whatever it is, Fellowship Home Loans can help you do exactly that. You can refinance to lower your monthly payment, or you can use their fixed rate line of credit to take on projects or consolidate debt with your confidence and stability. The rate never changes. It gives you the flexibility to steward your home and your finances wisely. If that sounds like what your home needs right now, what your finances need right now, then start with a free consultation at fellowshiphomeloans.com/Allie. If you close with Fellowship Home Loans, you'll receive a $500 credit at closing just for my listeners. That's fellowshiphomeloans.com/Allie. Terms apply. See site for details. Fellowship Home Loans, mortgage lending by the book. Nationwide Mortgage Bankers, DBA Fellowship Home Loans, equal housing lender, NMLS number 819382. One quick correction that I want to say is that Talarico, if he wins this primary, won't necessarily be going against Cornyn because the senator in Texas, one of the senators in Texas, John Cornyn, does have primary opponents. He's got Wesley Hunt, he's got Ken Paxton. So it will only be John Cornyn if John Cornyn wins the primary. We'll see. Whoever it is, James Talarico, if he wins, will be going against the Republican candidate for that Senate position. So we'll see what happens there, but he is getting a lot of good press. In this moment, this quote unquote forbidden interview that he had with Stephen Colbert is working really well for him. So here's what happened. On Monday night, February 16th, during a segment of The Late Show, Stephen Colbert told his audience that the show's parent company, CBS, was stopping him from airing this pre-recorded interview that he had done with Talarico due to pressure from the FCC. Then he told his audience to watch the interview on YouTube. So say, this is a big forbidden interview. Trump doesn't want you to see this. It's brilliant marketing. Both in the actual interview and in the promotion afterward, Colbert and Talarico reinforced that narrative, saying that, hey, Trump really, really doesn't want you to hear what this guy has to say. So on.
This is the party that ran against cancel culture. And now they're trying to control what we watch, what we say, what we read. And this is the most dangerous kind of cancel culture, the kind that comes from the top. They went after The View because I went on there. They went after Jimmy Kimmel for telling a joke they didn't like. They went after you for telling the truth about Paramount's bribe to Donald Trump.
Okay, I just want to clarify something really fast and everything that he says. You know, he talks quickly like a politician in these kind of vague terms, and you might hear it and say, wow, yeah, that's really bad. When any Democrat references, oh, Republicans want you to stop you from reading certain things. We're not talking about, oh yeah, we don't want an adult to read To Kill a Mockingbird. We're talking about we don't want kids to be forced to read pornographic material in schools. We don't want school libraries to have basically pornographic books that are encouraging them to think about different forms of sexuality or convincing them that they might be born in the wrong body. So that's the kind of so-called censorship that they are calling cancel culture. And also when they're talking about Jimmy Kimmel making a joke, yeah, he made an absolutely disgusting joke that made light of Charlie Kirk getting slaughtered in front of thousands of people. And so I just want to be clear about exactly what he's referencing. On X, he said, this is the interview Donald Trump didn't want you to see. His FCC refused to air my interview with Stephen Colbert. Trump is worried we're about to flip Texas, which is also something that he said to very loud applause to Stephen Colbert's audience. So that YouTube video has more than 5 million views, and a lot of the commenters were saying the only reason they're watching it is because they heard that Trump doesn't want them to watch that. Talarico's campaign also announced that it raised $2.5 million in the 24 hours after the interview aired on YouTube. So this is the single largest fundraising period of the campaign. But the problem is, it's fiction. It's not true. The FCC, what they're doing, this has nothing to do with Trump. They're enforcing a rule that has existed for a long time, that's been around for almost a century, that says that you have to give equal airtime to a politician who is running to their opponent. Colbert and Talarico made it sound like the Trump administration is controlling free speech, but what the FCC is actually doing is just encouraging the networks, requiring that the networks actually give equal opportunity to all candidates. So specifically via Axios, this is what the equal time rule is that the FCC is enforcing. It requires U.S. radio and television broadcasters to provide equivalent airtime and terms to all legally qualified political candidates for the same office if one candidate uses the station's facilities. So in this case, it's not that the FCC is actually saying, hey, you've got to get Kim Paxton or another Republican on here. They're saying in this case that he needs to have Jasmine Crockett on. And Jasmine Crockett needs to have an equivalent time to also promote her campaign. So this doesn't even really have to do with Republican versus Democrat. The rule originated in Section 18 of the Radio Act of 1927, so 99 years ago. It was later incorporated into Section 315 of the Communications Act of 1934. And it was driven by concerns that broadcasters could manipulate an election outcome by favoring certain candidates or viewpoints. And then later in 1959, Congress added 4 exemptions to the rule: bona fide newscasts, news interviews, news documentaries, on-the-spot coverage. But of course, Colbert doesn't fall into any of those. And so that's what the FCC is doing here. It's not a Trump versus Talarico thing. I highly doubt that Trump knew anything about this, or that the FCC even cares about this. Here's what Brian Stelter posted on X. He's quoting the CBS statement in response to all of this. The Late Show was not prohibited by CBS. So The Late Show is on CBS. This is the network saying what Colbert is saying is not true. Was not prohibited by CBS from broadcasting the interview with Representative James Talarico. The show was provided legal guidance that the broadcast could trigger the FCC equal time rule for 2 other candidates, including Representative Jasmine Crockett, and presented options for how the equal time for other candidates could be fulfilled. And so actually what it sounds like CBS is saying, they're saying that the FCC didn't actually do anything. The FCC didn't say anything. This is CBS's guidance saying, hey, just so you know, we have this 99-year rule that could be enforced by the FCC if you air this interview and don't air the other interview. CBS is saying this is the guidance they gave to Stephen Colbert's show, which means that Stephen Colbert knows this. He's been in television for a long time, and he still ran with this false narrative, which is brilliant marketing, but it's a lie. CBS goes on to say, The Late Show decided to present the interview through its YouTube channel with on-air promotion on the broadcast rather than potentially providing the equal time options. Of course, Colbert wants Talarico to win, and we'll get into why their brand of so-called Christianity matches. Now, a University of Houston poll released February 9th showed that Crockett is actually leading Talarico with 47% of the Democratic primary support compared to his 39%. Texas Tribune. Just a side note, that is good news for Republicans, okay? We do want Jasmine Crockett to win. Like we do. I think that she is more defeatable than Talarico is. Plus, I just believe that his brand of Christianity actually sends people to hell, if you believe it. And, I don't think she claims to be a beacon of Christian morality. And yeah, I just think that she would be more entertaining to watch in a debate between any of the Republican candidates. And I think that the Republican is more likely to win if she wins the primary. So it looks to me like Colbert is trying to boost his ratings as much as possible. But let's talk a little bit about the content of what the conversation was. And Talarico loves these same talking points about Christianity that we've debunked before, but it never gets old, and you never know who is watching, who needs to hear what the Bible actually says about these issues versus what Talarico has to say. We'll get into that in a second. Let me pause, tell you about our next sponsor for the day. That is 7 Weeks Coffee. We love 7 Weeks Coffee in our home. I love coffee in general, but it also makes me happy knowing that my coffee is serving a higher purpose, that 10% of every sale of 7 Weeks Coffee goes to a pregnancy center across the country. They have donated over $1 million to these pregnancy centers. That translates into saving thousands of baby lives. The reason they're called 7 Weeks Coffee is because at 7 weeks, that baby inside the womb is the size of a coffee bean. Yet no matter how small a person is, they are made in God's image. They matter. They are worth fighting for. So when you buy 7 Weeks Coffee, you're not only getting organic, super high quality, really clean coffee that tastes great, but you are also allowing this coffee, the purchase of this coffee, to support the lives of these unborn children. When you subscribe to 7 Weeks Coffee, you save 15% every month. And then when you use my code Allie, you save an extra 10% off your order. Go to 7weekscoffee.com, use code Allie at checkout for that discount. That's 7weekscoffee.com, code Allie. Now, this is my favorite line from Talarico when he tells you that, God never really said anything about abortion or homosexuality, so why do these darn conservatives care about it so much? SOT 16.
They convinced a lot of our fellow Christians that the most important issues were abortion and gay marriage. 2 issues that aren't mentioned in the Bible, 2 issues that Jesus never talked about. Jesus in Matthew 25 tells us exactly how you and I and every one of our fellow believers, how we're going to be judged and how we're going to be saved. by feeding the hungry, by healing the sick, by welcoming the stranger. Nothing about going to church, nothing about voting Republican. It was all about how you treat other people.
Ephesians 2:8-10 says, by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing. It is a gift of God, not a result of works, so that no one may boast. I don't know how many times God through Paul has to tell us, hey, you don't contribute to your salvation. Works cannot save you. You can never be good enough. We read that over and over again in the book of Romans, in the book of Galatians, that actually, if you are going to try to earn your salvation through good works, you better be ready to keep the entirety of the law. If you are saying that your own righteousness is what contributes to your salvation, you better be perfectly righteous, because it is only perfection that God will and can accept. And because none of us can be perfect, he sent his own son to die for us, to be perfect, to be our perfect sacrifice, to sacrifice himself on our behalf, so that by grace, which is a free gift through faith, we might be saved. So I just wanted to address that gospel level false teaching first, because that's the most important thing. Like your soul hangs on you understanding that correctly. But then I want to get to the other part that he says that, oh, the right cares so much about homosexuality and abortion, and the Bible never talks about these things, which is actually insane. You know, like the big 10 rules that God sets out that are reiterated, re-emphasized in the New Testament. Jesus actually doubles down on the 10 commandments in every way. One of those commandments is found in Exodus 20:13. You shall not murder. What is murder? It's not all form of killing. It is defined as the purposeful killing of an innocent person, a legally innocent person. So it's not self-defense. It's not war. It's not even the death penalty. It is the intentional killing. It's not even manslaughter. The intentional killing of a legally innocent person. Abortion fits that bill, because a baby inside the womb is a human being. If he or she is not a human being, you're going to have to tell me what she is. Is she a summer squash? Is she a bullfrog? She is not a potential human being. She is living. She's a human being, and abortion intentionally kills her. So you shall not murder. Really, really easy. Of course, homosexuality is forbidden in the Old Testament, but we also see in the New Testament very explicitly. And Romans 1:26-28, not only is homosexuality listed, but the behavior itself is condemned as ungodly, as immoral, as depraved. We read in 1 Corinthians 6:9-10 that the sexually immoral, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor men who practice homosexuality will be able to inherit the kingdom of God. Goes on to say, such were some of you. But of course, all of us can be saved by God's grace. And we use this alliteration so much. And it's a reminder that as Christians, we don't just look at the Bible and say, ooh, what can we get away with? Because God doesn't really mention it the way that we think he should mention it. We ask, how can I be holy? How can I glorify God the most? So not just what does God tell me not to do, but what does God tell me to do? And the Bible only positively defines sexuality and marriage in one way, between one man and one woman. It's rooted in creation, Genesis 1, reiterated throughout Scripture. Honor your father and mother, repeated by Jesus himself. Matthew 19:4-5. It is representative of Christ and the church, Ephesians 5, and it is reflective of the gospel. The Bible starts with the marriage and ends with the marriage. That is how important it is. And that's why when you have someone like James Talarico who doesn't believe that, he doesn't believe in Genesis 1:27, he doesn't believe in Ephesians 5, he doesn't believe in the earthly representation of the spiritual marriage between Christ and his bride, the church. He doesn't believe in Matthew 19:4-5, so he actually rejects so many of the red letters of Jesus. When you have people like that who deny this fundamental tenet of Christianity that has an eternal reflection in heaven, they also end up denying the central tenet of Christianity, which is John 14:6, that Jesus is the way, the truth, the life, that no one comes to the Father except through him. He has said on other podcasts that there are multiple ways to get to heaven. There are multiple ways to be a good person. And he learns more about his faith through Islam and Buddhism and secularism and all of these other worldviews. The man is not a Christian by any definition of what a Christian is. It's not enough to just believe that Jesus said some good things. It's not enough to just feed the poor. It's not enough to just have this list of good works. It's certainly not enough to be a progressive. Do you believe the gospel? Do you believe that Jesus is God? Do you believe that he sacrificed himself for your sins? Do you, by grace through faith, believe in his death, burial, and resurrection? Do you believe that all of your righteousness only comes from him and not from yourself? If you don't believe those things, which I think James Talarico has been extremely clear that he does not, then you're not a Christian. And quite frankly, if you are for the slaughter of children inside the womb, if you are for the brutalizing of the bodies of kids outside of the womb because they believe they're born in the wrong body, if you believe in outsourcing all of the compassion that we see modeled for us in Matthew 25 to the government, I don't care at all what your theology is. I'm not interested in your moral preening at all. So when you hear James Talarico, he sounds persuasive. He sounds smooth, and he is. He's a smooth operator because he's a politician, but he's not a Christian. So just keep that in mind as you're listening to him. Now, he's got more to say about things like the separation of church and state. And actually, he calls Stephen Colbert the ideal Christian. We'll get into more of that in a second. Let me pause, tell you about our next sponsor, and that is Legacy Box. We talk a lot on the show about the importance of family. You guys know I'm so close to my parents. I was so close to my grandmother while she was alive. And I want to pass down all of the memories that I have with my parents, that I had with my grandparents, down to my children. But some of those memories are not on my iPhone. They are in Polaroids. They are in VHS tapes. And I don't want to lose those. I want to make sure that I can digitize them, that I can put them in one spot and then pass them down to my kids and my grandkids one day. And Legacy Box does that. They send you a box and you put your pictures and you put your VHS tapes and all of those memories into the box, and then you ship it off to them. They take care of all of it. They digitize it. They put it in a file. They send it back to you. They send all of the videotapes and all of the pictures back to you. And then you have it all forever. And you can always pass it down, and you don't have to worry about losing it or damaging them in a move or anything like that. This really does keep those memories intact. Go to legacybox.com/Allie. You'll get a 50% discount just for my listeners. That's pretty amazing. legacybox.com/Allie. Okay, Sat 2. Talarico loves the separation of church and state, apparently.
Because we are called to love all of our neighbors, including our Muslim, Jewish, Buddhist, Hindu, Sikh, agnostic, atheist neighbors, and forcing our religion down their throats is not love. And it's why I've fought so hard for that sacred separation in our First Amendment, because my granddad, he raised me to believe that that boundary between church and state doesn't just benefit the state or our democracy, although it certainly does, but it also benefits the church.
Oh, so many things. First of all, God is love, 1 John 4:8. So we cannot love other people without loving them through his truth and through his gospel, and evangelizing to people and sharing the gospel with people and showing people the love of Christ and telling them what can save their souls from condemnation is a form of love. That's not forcing anyone to do anything. I don't believe that. I don't believe in living in some kind of tyrannical theocracy where people are forced to go to a Baptist church. I don't know anyone who believes that, actually, but of course we believe that a great way, the best way to love someone is to share the gospel with them and, yes, meet their material needs. We are called to do that as Christians. And again, that's not the government's primary job. That's the church's primary job. And Talarico seems to confuse that there. But I also just want to note about the separation of church and state. Remember, this is a letter to the Danbury Baptist from Thomas Jefferson, where he is comforting them by saying, look, the state is not going to interfere in your affairs. This is not really as much about the protection of the state, although he is right in the First Amendment. We don't want an establishment of a state religion, and that separation does exist there. But remember, the separation of church and state is not the separation of God in law. That is impossible. You can't separate morality from law. Law is morality. You can't separate your worldview from your vote. You shouldn't. And by the way, Talarico doesn't. He is sitting here saying, I don't want to shove my faith down anyone's throat, but by the way, you're a bad Christian if you don't believe the same things I do. Oh, separation of church and state, but Matthew 25 says how we are supposed to treat the poor through our taxpayer dollars. So this is just their form of Christian nationalism. They are constantly using their bastardized interpretation of scripture to tell you, to morally extort you into voting for progressive policies. To love your neighbor, you have to affirm transgenderism. To love your neighbor, you have to affirm your neighbor's right to choose to have a doctor slaughter her child. And you'll remember on the Joe Rogan podcast, he used the example of Mary consenting to her pregnancy as his justification for why he is pro the poisoning, starving, and dismemberment of babies inside the womb. And by the way, I just want you to read that passage in Luke. That's not actually what goes on. The angel doesn't ask her a question. The angel just says, this is going to happen to you. And she says, okay. That's Allie's standard version. She doesn't, there's no question and consent there. Yes, she does accept the will of God, but that is not any kind of basis for murdering a child inside the womb. Like, how disgusting do you have to be to try to use a passage from the Gospels to try to say that that's the Christian perspective? Okay, then he also says, and we'll end on this one for this segment, that Stephen Colbert is actually the model of Christianity. Thought 3.
I just want to thank you, Stephen, because I know you're not a politician, but you have really shown people in this country what Christianity should be and what it means to actually live out the teachings of Jesus, even in a talk show.
Well, I'm going to push back a little bit on that. That's very nice of you to say.
Okay, well, at least he pushed back on that. I don't know Stephen Colbert personally. He might be a nice guy, but, he's promoted some of the most dangerous lies of this culture with the rest of the secular progressives. And if James Talarico is someone who is like the did God really say of our generation, if he is the one telling you that you're a good Christian, that should cause some major self-evaluation. And I just want to give that as an aside and encouragement to you. It can be really hard to get criticism. It can be really hard to be called names. Even though we laugh about Hillary Clinton writing a hit piece about me in The Atlantic, it doesn't feel good for someone to accuse you of things that you know aren't true, to try to malign your character when you know that that's not an accurate description of who you are. But before you mourn, before you get sad about that, assess the character and the faith of the person who is lodging that complaint against you. Before you have any kind of feeling really about a compliment or a criticism, consider the source. And if it's someone who rejects the gospel who is criticizing you, then that's probably a good assessment that what you're saying and what you're representing is simply true. Now, speaking of races and speaking of candidates, last night I had the honor of moderating a debate between the Republican attorneys general candidates in Texas. And so I'm going to give you just a few highlights of that. It's really important for us to know what the top law enforcement officer in a state like Texas is thinking and is going to do, whether you live in Texas or whether you live in any other state. What you might not realize is that the attorneys general in all of the states, especially all the Republican states, all work together to advance the cause of conservatism. They're really kind of on the front lines of the legal fight when it comes to enforcing laws against abortion, laws against violating women's private spaces, laws against the genital mutilation of children. And Texas has huge population, huge resources that smaller or less populous states like, say, Montana or Louisiana, they really rely on the Texas AG to kind of lead the way in the fight on so many of these important legal battles defending the constitutional rights of Americans and especially championing the conservative cause. So this was a big deal. I was super honored to be a part of it. And let me just give you some behind the scenes and what happened going into it before we even play you some of the highlights. So this all started because last year I just had this thought of wanting to have the Republican attorneys general candidates on the show. I was like, it'd be cool to have them on individually, or maybe we could moderate some sort of debate. Maybe we could put it for Blaze TV subscribers or on YouTube. Somehow it evolved into something else. And the Republican Attorneys General Association, known as RAGA, they connected with us and they said, actually, we want to host kind of an official debate between the candidates, and we would love Allie to moderate it. Now, I was a little nervous about this. I've done a lot of things in front of a lot of people. I've given a lot of speeches. I debated 20 liberals on camera. I have done a lot of different news hits, and obviously I do this podcast. But I was nervous about this because it's different. One, I'm not always in the explicitly political sphere, and I've never moderated a debate. The closest thing that I've done to moderating a debate is like breaking up an argument between my kids. And so I just didn't know exactly how it was going to be. And we put, not just me, but my team and I put so much thought and so much work and so much research and so much attention to detail into every single question that we asked. And how we were kind of thinking about it is, we know that we'll have a national audience that's watching this, but we don't want it to just be national. It's got to be they've got to be subjects that are particular to Texas, but also relevant enough to people outside of Texas so that they will care and understand Texas is kind of leading the charge. We want questions that are going to highlight the differences between the candidates. We want questions that could possibly put tension between the candidates and the Trump administration. We'll get to those, one of those questions that I asked in a little bit. Also, if there is any tension there, any disagreement between any of the candidates and the current Attorney General of Texas, which is Ken Paxton. And so we wanted to create those juicy moments and maybe let the sparks fly a little bit. And my challenge was being able to control the debate to try to keep us on time as much as possible without being a school marm. I got some good advice from Megyn Kelly before this debate. Of course, she has moderated presidential debates in the past, and I knew that she would be a great person to go to. And she had some great tips for me. You don't want to come across like a school marm. You don't want to be the person that is constantly nagging them and constantly chastising the audience for applauding at the wrong time, constantly stopping someone if they're even a second over 60 seconds. But at the same time, you don't want to be a pushover, and you want to be fair, and you want to try to keep things moving along, and you want to try to abide by the rules as much as possible. Thankfully, for the most part, the candidates made it really easy. There wasn't a whole lot of trying to talk over the other person or try to go outside the bounds of the rules. And also another thing I did for preparation, which was just fun. I hadn't done this. I hadn't watched these in 10 years. I was like, I'm going to watch some of the Republican primary debates from 2016. Wow, what a different time. I just also have different eyes now for who all of these people are and what they're capable of. But I watched one debate, I think it was a CNN debate, and it was John Kasich, and then you had Ben Carson, and then you had Cruz, and you had Rubio, and you had Trump. And you watch them walk out. This is just kind of an aside. It doesn't have anything to do with this attorney general debate, but it was just funny. It was just funny to remember all of this. And all the candidates walk out and you see Trump. And now, of course, hindsight is 2020. And I'm like, it's obviously Trump. Of these candidates, it's obviously Trump. It's just how he carries himself and how the room responds to him. But then also, all of the candidates give their opening statement. We've got 8 years of Barack Obama behind us. Most people are not happy with how the country is going. And yet all of these candidates are giving these flowery opening statements about how amazing America is and how much they love this country, and their grandmother was an immigrant from Czechoslovakia, and America is great, and we just need the conservatism of Reagan, and we're going into this bright future. And now I can say, I'm like, oh my gosh, that is totally disjointed from how America felt. And then Trump comes in and he's just like, our borders are Swiss cheese. We're losing to ISIS. Obamacare is failing. And I'm like, oh, 100%. That is what people wanted to hear. So anyway, I had it was totally different than the debate that I did last night. But it kind of it made me think of worst case scenarios, how I would handle a back and forth if there were any personal jabs, which there were a few personal jabs last night, and how I would kind of navigate that. The moderators did a good job, but it was just good to kind of get in the headspace of like, oh yeah, this is how candidates talk to each other, how they feel about each other. So I try to ask some tough questions, put their feet to the fire. And so I'm going to give you some highlights of what some of these candidates said about, for example, the Islamification of Texas, about the abortion pill continuing to spill into Texas, largely because the Trump administration has refused, at least for now, to do something about that. Illegal immigration, crime, all the candidates had something interesting to say about these things. So we'll get into that in a second. Let me pause, tell you about our next sponsor for the day, and that is Range Leather. I love Kyle and Bailey of Range Leather. I got to meet them in person for the first time at Share the Arrows last year. They've been Relatable fans for a long time. They are a Christian family. They're the real deal. They make all of their leather products in Wyoming. They're all American made. They're all long lasting. I have so many of their products. I have a new tote bag from them that is just so durable. It's great to travel with because it's easy to clean. It carries so much. And if you are looking for a really high quality, long lasting gift to get anyone in your life, related bro or related gal, we do have Mother's Day coming up in just a couple months, then I really encourage you to look at Range Leather for wallets, for bags, for belts, for jewelry, all kinds of stuff. Like this is the kind of gift that someone is really going to appreciate for many years to come. Go to rangeleather.com/Allie. When you use my code Allie, you'll get 15% off all products. That's rangeleather.com/Allie. Okay, so one fun thing about this is that because I am unapologetically and openly conservative, because all the candidates are conservative, because RAGA is conservative, I didn't have to pretend to be unbiased when it comes to the issues and how I phrase the questions. Like we all agree on, for example, that the growing influence of Islam is something that's troubling. Like I didn't have to tiptoe around it. I didn't have to be politically correct. I could just say, okay, this is what we all agree on. What are you going to do about it? And so my first question was that basically, I'm kind of paraphrasing what my question was, but what are you going to do to address Texans' concerns about the growing influence of organizations like the Muslim Brotherhood and planned communities like Epic City? And here is what Mr. Wrights, Aaron Wrights, by the way, just before I play that clip, Aaron Wrights used to work for Attorney General Paxton. He worked in the DOJ. So he is an attorney. He's actually the only one on the stage who is not yet a politician. Here is his answer on the Islam question that I gave them.
Islam is incompatible with Western civilization. And in spite of that, they've developed a dark network of 501c3s, nonprofits, corporate entities, shell entities, PACs, political candidates, grant-making entities that have formed a network to rise the crescent moon over the Lone Star State. As Attorney General, I'm going to treat the Sharia pushers like the feds treated the mafia in the latter half of the 20th century. How many mob bosses did we get for committing murder? The answer is not many. But we smoked them out like I'm going to smoke out the Sharia pushers by an overwhelming force of investigations on process crimes, financial crimes, investigations, lawsuits.
And then on the abortion question, I asked them basically about the problem with the abortion pill. Like Texas has an enforcement framework in place after the Dobbs decision, after the overturning of Roe v. Wade. We have pro-life laws on the books, but thousands of mail-in abortion pills are arriving in Texas every day, are killing unborn Texans. And states like Louisiana have sued the FDA because under the Biden administration, the FDA removed the rule that these abortion pills like mifepristone have to be dispensed in person at a medical facility. And so Republican states are trying to get the FDA to change that guidance to say, no, you got to get the abortion pill in person. You can't mail it in from these online providers or out-of-state providers. And the Trump administration has said that they're reviewing it, but they have not done anything on it yet. And so I wanted to see what the candidates would say about a Republican presidential administration, about the Trump administration, and what they would do. to protect unborn Texans, even if doing so actually puts them at odds with Trump's FDA. Here's thought 7.
The sad truth is, too many conservatives want to pat themselves on the back for defunding Planned Parenthood when we have more babies being killed today with a pill than through Planned Parenthood. So we need to act, and the states need to pressure the FDA to get it right.
Okay, so what he says is correct there. Unfortunately, that's true. We love pro-life law. We want to defund Planned Parenthood. We should be doing all of those things. But if unborn children are continuing to die by the thousands, then obviously something is not right. And so we want an attorney general who is going to do everything they can to fight on behalf of the right of those unborn children not to be murdered by the abortion pill. Obviously, huge issue in Texas and everywhere, but especially Texas, because Texas has the largest border, is illegal immigration. And so there is this law called SB4 that is in the courts right now, and it's basically been stopped. It can't be enforced. And it was passed in the Texas legislature under the Biden administration because the Biden administration was failing to secure Texas's border, which is also Americans' border. And so the Texas legislature said, okay, well, we want to enforce our own immigration law. We want to protect our own border. We want to be able to deport illegal immigrants if the federal agencies aren't going to do so. And the courts are saying, oh, you can't do that. And right now, it's not really a huge problem because the Trump administration is doing a good job of protecting Texas's border. And so my question was, okay, if you are attorney general under a future presidential administration, which happens to be Democrat, how are you going to make sure that Texas can protect its border? Thought 6.
Anyone that is in the way of President Trump's deportation agenda, blocking ICE, things like you're seeing in Minnesota, guess what? The AG can sue them for 3 things, and I will. Number 1, civil penalties. Number 2, criminal penalties. Number 3, removal from office. And that also includes when they're not cooperating with the 287G program, the ICE detainer program, which we required every county in Texas to participate in.
Okay. So we want someone, an attorney general, who is going to be super, super strong on that. The attorney general could be, as I said, continue to be attorney general after Trump leaves office. That means hopefully we don't have a Democrat president in a few years, but that's possible. So that means those Republican attorneys general matter even more. Another candidate, State Senator Joan Huffman. Mays Middleton is also, by the way, a state senator in the Texas legislature. Aaron Reitz criticized her because Reitz said that district attorneys, he listed the district attorneys that he would go after day one due to their soft on crime policies and possible Soros ties. But Senator Huffman responded saying that she wrote the bill to remove those rogue DAs, but it's more complicated than just taking them out of office on day one. And then Reitz claimed that the attorney general has the tools to do that, that's a bad mentality. That's a loser mentality. You can do this day one. She says you can't. He says you can. Well, Huffman responded to Reitz saying this.
I just was going to comment on his loser comment, saying if it was something that could be done, I would ask the question, it begs the question, then why hasn't Paxton already done it?
Okay, there were a lot of fiery moments and back and forth, a lot of people going after Congressman Chip Roy, probably because he is at least perceived as the front runner right now. And so you've got Senator Mays Middleton and Mr. Aaron Wright, especially trying to go after Congressman Roy. And so they made some fiery claims. We had a little bit of a back and forth there a few times. So I really encourage you to go on YouTube or go on Blaze TV's X and watch this for yourself, especially if you live in the state of Texas. By the way, early voting is open and voting day is on March 3rd in Texas. And here's my advice that I always give you during election time. And I'm giving this advice to myself too, because I have not voted yet, but I wanted to wait until after the debate. Do early voting. Go in there. Get your vote in, because you just never know what's going to happen on election day. You forget that you had like a kid's school party. You get sick. You forgot about that you had a dentist appointment, bad weather. You don't want to drive in a storm, whatever it is. You don't want to be prevented from voting. And remember, politics matter. Because policy matters, because people matter. Politics affects policy, policy affects people. People matter to God, and therefore they matter to us. All right, we've got one more topic to discuss today, but let me tell you about our last sponsor for the day first, and that is Good Ranchers. So America is turning the big 250 this year, which means we're not just celebrating on July 4th. We want to celebrate every day by making sure that we are supporting American companies that support American farms and ranches. You should be getting all of your meat from an American farm or ranch, because this industry has been down bad for several years just because of over-regulation and reliance on cheaper meat from other countries. But we don't want our meat to come from Nicaragua or China. We want to support these American family farms and make sure that they can survive. And plus, we get really high quality meat when we rely on these family farms. 80% of the beef that you see in the grocery store, even if it says made in America, is actually imported from abroad. That sticker doesn't mean anything. It just means that it was put in plastic in America. We don't actually know what farm it comes from. So if you want the guarantee that your meat, that your chicken, that your seafood, that your beef is coming from an American farm or ranch, then get your meat from Good Ranchers. We get our box of meat from Good Ranchers every single month. We get our bacon, our ground beef, our chicken breast. We love it so much, and we rely on it almost every night in the Stuckey home. Go to goodranchers.com, use code Allie. You'll get $25 off your first order. That's goodranchers.com, code Allie. Okay. As usual, there were 4 other topics that we were going to get to today that we didn't end up getting to, but we are going to cover those on Monday. We've unfortunately got multiple shootings committed by people who identify as transgender, but there's like something deeper in all of these stories that I want to explore. I will be talking about the Frida baby story and just what we're seeing about the depth of depravity when it comes to the sexualization of children. And sometimes it's portrayed in this lighthearted way, and then sometimes with the Epstein files, it is like as obviously dark and demonic as you can get. And so we're going to explore all of that in Monday's episode. But since we only have a few minutes left, I wanted to talk about this shorter story that is somewhat lighthearted, but as you know, I also find the subject extremely disturbing. So you'll probably remember Bree used to always bring me these stories of adults treating their dolls as children. And it was just a form of sick torture that she liked to bring to the show. And I would always be so disturbed by these women who are trying to fill this void, which is a real void and a good desire of wanting to mother, wanting to nurture with this inanimate object. As much as I am against trying to replace a child with pets, I am even more so against trying to replace a child with a doll. Now, it's one thing to just have appreciation for dolls. I think in some ways, like men and women never really grow out of that, but it's just different because men get to actually go and fly planes and drive trains, and women don't really have like a version, like an adult version of like the things that we like to do as kids. But this is a very dark manifestation of that. It means that our priorities and how we are treating adulthood has really gone wrong. There are these conferences where these women who treat their dolls as toddlers, feed them, change their diaper, take them out. You're laughing out there in this room. It's true. And put them in baby carriers and put them in strollers. And like they take videos of them going on vacation with them. There is this whole influencer who like shows her day in the life where she's turning on the lights and she's like waking up her children and they're dolls. It's very, very, very sad. Very sad. Like we need better hobbies. We need better ways to spend our time. But now we also have adults using dolls to be progressive activists. And there's like a lot of crossover here between Disney adults, adult doll people, and these left-wing activists. And I think that the through line is actually what we call misplaced mothering, is that when your motherhood instinct is not channeled in the right healthy direction toward a child, whether it's your child or a child that you're volunteering to take care of, it manifests itself in like really ugly and bitter and weird ways. So now we've got American girl doll influencers. That's a thing. They're using their platforms, this is according to the Rolling Stone, to advance left-wing politics, including their disdain for ICE. So we've got this one person on Instagram, back in time AG, okay? And this person, Kirsten, will be happy when ICE gets the F out of Minnesota. You know what? Kirsten is churning butter. Okay, she doesn't care about ICE. I guarantee you, Kirsten and her parents would have supported deporting illegal immigrants. And then you've got Josephine. I had a Josephine doll. ICE needs to get the F out of my country. Josephine, you live in Mexico. Okay, ICE is not in your country. There are other types of influencers that are also using their American Girl dolls to protest what's going on with Trump and ICE. There's this collector, AGTV for Life. She runs an Etsy shop selling doll clothes. Okay, so if you're not watching this, she has all of these dolls. She's got one in a wheelchair that says resist fascism. She says resist. You've got, okay, so she's creating these little protest signs. They're at a No Kings protest. You've got way too much time on your hands, okay? We need a job, girly. We need a hobby. We need to go to church. Oh my gosh. They have mouths like a sailor, these dolls. I just can't imagine finding your purpose in this. And we also have doll ICE agents. Oh my goodness. It's too much. It's too much. We're laughing, but think about what has to be going on spiritually for a person to spend their time doing this. We also have this other creator who is using their doll, looks like with a fake AR-15, saying F ICE. Very disturbing. Very disturbing. I think that at the very least, like you need to be visited. You need to be visited by the FBI. Maybe just to chit chat, but just like to check you out. If I found out that is my neighbor, like we've got issues going on. So there's something simultaneously happening here. On the one hand, you've got the infantilizing of adults who use dolls and do a bunch of kids stuff like, you know, I'm not saying going to Disney as an adult is always bad, but the obsession is weird. Also, like adults watching Bluey by themselves. Like there's this infantilization of adults going on, this extended adolescence that I think arrests the development that you need to actually be a productive and like well-developed, healthy, mentally person. But at the same time, there's an adultification of children stuff. We see that here. We've seen that with that whole scandal a few years ago, Balenciaga when they were putting like BDSM gear on kids' toys. And so it's the conflation and the confusion of adolescence and childhood and adulthood that is making this very disturbing combination. Okay. And I'm not really sure exactly what the answer is, except, I mean, definitely find God. Like, definitely do that. Definitely change everything fundamentally about what you're doing. But there is something deeper spiritually going on here that has to do with disorder, the confusion between man and woman, the confusion between right and wrong, and obviously the confusion between adult and child that I'll have to take some more time to analyze. But I just wanted to bring you with me on this very disturbing journey of adults using dolls as left-wing activists. All right, unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. But we've got a great show for you on Friday, and then another great show for you on Monday where we will be focusing on some of the theological aspects of these things, and we will see you back here in a couple days.